Okay, game in development, synSpace Drone Runners, version 1.09, not yet released. Progress snapshot update video. And this is documenting some changes to the sequencer, the music sequencer. So I'm playing the FM Snare 1, so this is an FM synthesis, so it's using 6 operators. And I've got them tweaked to sound like a snare drum. Anyway, you can pick an instrument, something you want to play. Okay, so now we go to the sequencer, and it has various sections. So go to the loop section, and this is what we're documenting today. So the loops are the same as before, where basically you tap them to turn them on or off, but instead of lighting up, they now start rotating. And the little circles that are rotating are in fact, like this guy's selected, he has 1, 2, 3, 4 notes set, a red, red, purple, blue, and you'll see the dots here are actually red, red, purple, blue. Not that you're supposed to spend any time decoding the colors, but if you need to, they're there. And so what this would normally do is it would loop. It would just play note 1 and then note 2, then note 3, and get to the end and then come back to the beginning. Each hexagon represents one loop, and there are 15 loops total. They used to be represented as 15 squares, now they're 15 hexagons, and you can see a tiny little number at the top if you need to know which one's which. Tapping one on makes it start to play. Whoops. And this one looks like this. The size of the circle here is just keeping track of the one and two and nature of it, and I don't really like it here. And then when the loop is done, it's come full circle and it's ready to go again, and that's just a loop. So this little weird little square circle here in the middle is supposed to imply that this loop will just loop over and over again. And just like as before, I can toggle several on and then listen to them simultaneously. So I can both create new loops and I can make a performance where I turn them on and off over the course of the performance, and also play, just regular track music at the same time. The loops are droning on and on and on. Each loop has 6 neighbors, and I can drag an arrow. So when this loop here, when loop 4 finishes, it will trigger the loop to its right, and then that's loop 5. And when loop 5 finishes, it will trigger the loop to its southeast, which is number 10. And I have them basically going in a circle. So if I just start it anywhere in the loop, it'll start playing this guy, and when he's done, it'll go to the next guy, and then go to the next guy. It doesn't have to be the circle, it's just any pattern of little direction vectors. So you could oscillate back and forth and make a single loop that was out of the entire, out of all 15 loops. But this will then just repeat. And the kind of cool thing about this is I can turn on, here I'll turn on 3 of them at the same time. And they're sort of like a little worm following its tail around the circle. And yet the time I waited before starting is preserved until, if I put them too close together, they could get to a certain point where they could step on each other's toes and end up canceling out. When it triggers the next guy, it doesn't just turn him on, it toggles his state. Normally he would have been off, and so therefore it looks like it's turning him on, but it might just likely be turning it off. Anyway, so, I just try to put as few notes as possible into each loop and keep them, tonally not too out of tune. But this is boring drone, and presumably you'd be playing some exciting thing along with it. I don't know. You wouldn't be doing it on this keyboard, unfortunately, because there's so much lag. The other thing you can do is when you're editing a loop, normally there are 16 notes in the loop, but like say you want it to be 3/4 time, you can, this little marker here is the loop point, and you can drag it down to 12, and now basically there's only 3 beats in this measure before it loops back to the front, giving you 3/4 time. As part of this work, I also fixed an old bug where it turns out I wasn't releasing these notes at the point when I thought I was. So it turns out I was doing it was like you were always being super staccato on the keyboard, just, you know, tapping each note for just the smallest amount of time. Which, you know, if you're in a beep boop frame of mind, mission accomplished. Anyway, so here's my first little composition using this technology. Well, so that's how the loop things work now. The idea is that loops can trigger other loops on and off. A loop normally has 16 steps in it, right? So say you wanted one with 32 steps in it, you could just say, well, I want to just start here in 2, and I'll just drag it to 3, and now 2, when it's done, will start 3. And when 3 is done, it will loop back to the beginning, but because this arrow is pointing at it, it will say, oh, the beginning is actually over here. So you'll end up having a 32-step sequence, which you then edit in 2 parts. So you edit the first part or the second part. The editing hasn't changed. You can, with one hand, you can hold down the slot where you'd like to put a note and then just tap on the keyboard the note you want to put into it. Or you can actually play along, and if you get the note lag right, you can get the notes to land in the places you want. If needed, you can change the beats per minute to make it easier to play along during composition. Oh yeah, when you start a loop now, it really starts the loop right there. So if the loop was not playing and I started, it should play its noon beat. It should play the first beat of the thing, the instant I tap the button. So as before, when you would turn one on, it never really changed its phase. It just, if you tapped it kind of in the middle of the cycle, well, it kind of picked up in the middle of its cycle on a note by note basis, and now it actually rewinds its cycle to the moment that you turned it on. And when it gets turned off, it generally just kind of freezes where it was, which should be like 1 step before the next beat. You can also do stuff like this. If I just point these guys at each other, then they'll do the same thing in this case for a 2-part thing. This one triggers that one, and that one triggers that one. And this is kind of nice because it literally will only go back 1 step, whereas if you use the loop thing, it'll go back and it'll follow the arrows backwards to find the first cell, which there may be more than 1 cell that lead into a loop. I was thinking that if you had some pattern, some simple pattern that you wanted to play it such that you played it the same way 3 times and then a little differently the 4th time, that it would be cool to be able to have a loop thing with an iterator, with a counter on it, and say, oh, do this loop 6 times, and then trigger the next guy. So yeah, I'm thinking, you set down your little groove of these guys, and then, when there's an ominous tone, you just turn this one on. And then when the monster's not there anymore, it's off, but the main song is still playing. And these are then all under the control of Lua. But, you'd want to abstract that 1 step further so that sort of a critter itself could emit a mood that could then be interpreted from the perspective of a particular character, such as its danger level to a mouse might be different than its danger level to an elephant. Well, I just like these patterns, and you can do any loops of any length, and not every loop in this pattern has to be the same number of steps. And I just love this, you know, starting two at opposite sides with a little bit of a phase difference, and then it's like one starts and plays for half its thing, and then the other one moves and plays for half its thing, and then the first one moves and plays half its thing, or whatever you want to do, you know. And if I did some experiments where in each loop I did rhythmic experiments with a single note value, single pitch, and then I knew from the colors which pitches they were, and so therefore I could pick pitches that were major and minor thirds apart or perfect fifths apart or whatever. And then if you plan your little wheel, basically if it sounds nice, if it's basically sort of the notes of a piano in a row, you can, you know, form a triad by tapping three of them at once, and then that triad will then just rotate, and you'll get, you know, you'll get a chord progression. And it doesn't have to be directly up the scale. It could be a legitimate chord progression for your song because you laid it out very carefully in the individual grids. And maybe you figured out a way to kind of get some non-repeating patterns here and there. Yeah, I really like it. I think it's much easier on the eye for the rotation instead of having them flash so much. I guess that's it. Thank you. It's kind of early and I don't really want to wake anybody up, but I'm guessing I'm going to have to turn the sound on so you can sort of hear it, how low I can make it. I guess I'll do a performance to show you what I've done here. Like this one here contains these, that pattern, right? It's just the same note repeated 16 times. But I can now change that, and it is reflected up here. So instead of just showing a hexadecimal value, I'm showing you the Roy G. Biv colors of the notes in the 16 slots. I can still erase that with a long press. Okay, so let's type something new in here. When this pattern plays and it comes around back up to north, every time it comes to north, it has to make a decision. Am I going to loop around again, or am I going to just link to somebody else? So instead of being limited to a single buffer of 16 steps, you could link, in the simplest case, you'd link them like this. Here, we'll link them all like that. So I can turn one on and off by just tapping it. I can edit it by going here. I can clear it by long pressing it. I can then type in a song of whatever I like this. Dunk, 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 dunk. I can pause it. I can play a single step. I can turn it off. I can turn on. I can select number 2. I can turn him on. He's all that note. I can clear him out. And now I can just sort of live play. I'll turn this one back on, and then I'll just play along with that. And we'll just do that for a bunch of these guys. Wipe them all out. Wipe them all out. So this is all just like it was before. But anyway, so one of the problems with this in the past was that you only had 16 notes in a loop. And what if you wanted to do 3/4 time? Well, now what you can do is if you put your finger in the 16 and drag it to the 12, it'll now loop at the 12 point, and this gives you 3 beats with 4 steps, 4 slots per beat. So that's a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a kind of thing. So this loop now is only a 12-step loop, whereas this loop, which I can also turn on, is still a 16-step loop. So now I have these 2 loops both on at the same time, and one of them is a 16-step loop and one of them is a 12-step loop. If I want, I can bring it down to like now that's a 1-beat loop. It's a 4-step loop, basically has 1 beat in it. So we turn it on, turn the other ones off. So basically it plays 1 note per beat. And if I go to this guy and drag him down to 8, now he's a 2-beat guy, but he's got 8 different little slots he can play. So let's turn him on. So he's going twice as fast as he is, but still slower than these 2 guys. Turn the volume back up again. So if you just want a popcorn random note generator kind of thing, not sure why you would, but you can do that now. Okay, so fine. You know, I guess I should make it if you drag a link, it should automatically put it into link mode. That's kind of obvious, huh? Anyway, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this first one now and I'm going to drag him to the right. And I'm going to select him, and then this symbol here that you can't really see, I'm going to tap it until it's a straight line. So a straight line. So now what happens is we'll turn these other guys off. Close that. Okay. So all of these guys are simple looping guys, except these 2, this one points into that one, and then that one loops back. So that turns out to make this a 32-step loop. So you can start it, and it goes around once, and then that guy goes around once, and then it comes back to this one, and just goes back and forth. So each guy is like a little clock. He starts on his noon and he goes around. The first note played is his noon o'clock note, and the last note played is his 11 o'clock note. It's just before noon o'clock note. So this one does 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 16 each. That's a total of 80 steps before it repeats. So you can have an 80-step pattern before it repeats. And if I just start it over here, okay. Anyway, the whole point is to be semi-unpredictable. If you want predictable, just, put them in a row and don't do anything fancy. So we start the recording. Right. Okay, and then we'll just unpause it, and then we'll just start our thing. Just one guy going. Now there should be 2 guys going. Oh no, that's what I did. This should be looping back to there, which looks like it is. And this should be looping through here. He should never be firing. Yeah, looks right. Okay, let's A minor again. So there was my test note. There was my yellow marker for starting the loop. Okay, so we stop and we look over here and it's there. Okay, so the loop really should start now. If it doesn't, then I've broken that. I'm trying to make them tighter while at the same time supporting these new features. Okay, so this would be the start of the loop. This would be measure 1. Now we're in measure 2, now we're in measure 3, now we're in measure 4, back to measure 1. Okay, so this should play 1, 2, 3, 4, and then my song, looping forever. Now, what I'd like to be able to do this is where beautiful music comes from. Pepper it with a few other blips. Okay, anyway, so that's the change to the loop system. Anyway, that's a nice long film. I hope that edits down.